Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. Of all the prophets whose stories are told in the Quran, Prophet Moses is the most frequently mentioned. Last week, we began learning about the early part of his life. In this episode, let's continue our discussions where we left off. Prophet Moses went to what he thought was a burning bush, but as he got closer, he realized the bush wasn't actually burning. So what was this light that he saw? Joining me is Dr. Shabir Ally to complete the story of Prophet Moses. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Pleasure to be on.
So let's pick up from where we left off in the last segment. Can you tell us about the burning bush that Prophet Moses saw? What was it actually?
Yeah, the 20th chapter of the Quran, entitled Surah Taha, describes this. Moses sees this light and he figures, okay, I'll go up and maybe I'll get a burning branch to bring back to warm the family, and also some light to see the way. But the Bible describes it that when he went up there, he saw that whereas there is a flame, the bush isn't burning. And then God calls out to him from the bush. In Exodus chapter 3, it says that the angel of the Lord was there, but he speaks as though this is God himself speaking. In the Quran, in the 20th chapter, the voice calls out to him and says, Inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni. I am God, there is no God but me, so worship me. Wa aqimis salata li dhikri, and establish prayer for my remembrance.
Is that when prayer was officially, prescribed on Muslims to start practicing on a regular basis? Was that the first time that happened?
Of course, the worship of God is very ancient, and we know even from the book of Genesis in the Bible that Abraham fell on his face and worshiped God. So the manner of praying, of bowing, prostrating, and so on, this goes back very ancient times, to Abraham before Moses, definitely. The use of the term salat here, which can be translated prayer, should not give the idea of necessarily a Muslim prayer. It's just the Arabic word salat means prayer in general. It could refer to a Muslim prayer or a Christian prayer. But we believe that the prophets of God prayed in ways which are very similar to the ways in which Muslims pray today, in that they included perhaps bowing and prostrating. So Moses then is being told by God to recognize that God is the only God. There's no God but the one true God, and this will form an important part of what will be called the Ten Commandments later on, to be given to Moses in more detail. But Moses now is commissioned by God. He's sent to Pharaoh and the oppressive people of Egypt to command them on behalf of God that they should let the Israelites go.
So how did Prophet Moses carry out and deliver this message in light of dealing with someone like Pharaoh at the time?
It wasn't easy. To begin with, Moses protested to God that he himself is not a good speaker. He has a sort of impediment in his speech, and he asked, can my brother go with me and let him be the spokesperson? And God then decreed that Aaron, his brother, will go along with him and be his spokesperson. And God also granted Moses the performance of some miracles. They are mentioned in the Quran as tis'a ayat, 9 signs that he would demonstrate to the Pharaoh to show that God is really with him. And so in the performance of these miracles, it was hoped that the Pharaoh would see that God is with Moses, and he would let the people of Israel go from under his oppressive regime. But rather, the Quran shows that his heart was hardened. The Bible actually says that God hardened his heart so that he would not listen, and then God would demonstrate his powers against him. In any case, the Pharaoh then pursues the people of Israel as they are making their way across the sea and into the Sinai Peninsula, and there eventually the Pharaoh and his army are drowned in the sea.
Can you tell us, I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but maybe a little bit more detail on the Ten Commandments?
Yes, when Moses now is in a position of relative safety with his people, naturally there is a need for new commandments and instructions from God to guide them. So at the helm of these new instructions is what is referred to as the Ten Commandments. It is said that Moses went up to speak with God and went up on a mountain, and God revealed to him what are called, well, commandments in general, but more specifically 10 commandments on 2 stone tablets. The commandments are basically they're numbered differently by different interpreters, but everyone seems to agree that there are 10 commandments. And following the Protestant Reformation list, we may give them as you should not have any but God as the one true God. You should not make any graven images of God, because God does not resemble anything that you see. You should not take the name of God in vain. You should observe the Sabbath as a holy day. You should honor your parents. You should not murder or commit adultery or steal or bear false witness or covet your neighbor's wife or a house or oxen or other property.
So how did Prophet Moses continue to keep his people on this struggle to the right path as he was journeying along on this mission?
The Bible shows, and the Quran seems to confirm, that his people were continually backsliding. Sometimes they would complain and say, it looks like we were better off in Egypt, though we were oppressed there. At least we had something to eat. But God shows in the Quran that his way is always to test people and to give them some hardship, but then to follow it up with ease. And the proper response of the believer is that during the period of hardship, we should be patient with God and wait for and keep praying to him for better times. But the people were shown to be recalcitrant and continuously complaining. God's way of dealing with believers is to continually test them. So he gives them hardships, and then that's followed up with ease. And the natural response of believers is to be patient during the period of test and to keep asking God to bring about better times. But this is not what often happened. The people were recalcitrant, continuously complaining. And God did give them something to eat. God bestowed on them, as mentioned in the Bible and the Quran, manna and salwa. This salwa is easy to speak of. This is quail, a sort of bird. But manna is not so well defined in the Bible. It is mentioned as something wafer thin, and it tasted like honey. They could use that in baking bread. In any case, they had something to eat, but that did not quite satisfy them for long, because eventually they started asking, okay, so we're getting food from above, but why don't we get something from what the earth produces, like the onions and cucumbers and so on. So this is how the story goes. Now, in terms of their religiosity, it is mentioned that they got attracted to some of the idol worship of the people around them, so that when Moses went up to meet God, they, in the meantime, began to worship the golden calf.
And then what happened after that? How did that story, I guess, wrap up at the end?
Well, Moses came back with commandments from God and instructions for them to follow. And as a key part of that instruction and for the Reformation, they had to reduce the calf to ashes and to scatter the ashes in the ocean, and or into water, and they then were gradually weaned out of that and brought towards what we recognize now as monotheism, as the worship of only one God and the recognition that there is no God but this one true God.
Is there another prophet like Moses? Or is he sort of one of a kind?
Well, the Quran depicts the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a prophet like Moses. In the 73rd chapter of the Quran, in the 15th verse, it says, we have sent to you a prophet, a messenger, as we have sent previously Moses to Pharaoh. So the you here is the people of Mecca, and the prophet sent to them is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. There's an interesting connection, because in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, in chapter 18, there is a mention that God will send another prophet like Moses. And though it is mentioned there in the singular, biblical interpreters generally say nowadays that it is possible that this means that whenever people need a prophet, God will send one. But some interpreters, like Gerhard von Rad, for example, think that it could refer to a single prophet. In any case, it is clear that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a prophet like Moses. As Moses was a lawgiver, so too was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Not lawgivers on their own right, but as representatives of God on earth. They were conduits for God's law to be handed on to people. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we believe came as a fulfillment of the expectation of ancient times that there will be a prophet to come, and that prophet we now believe is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Just as we wrap up, how is the story of Moses relevant to us today?
It's relevant in many respects. One, we see from his early life that God saved him from the machinations of the evil king at the time. The king wanted him dead, but God saved him, and right under the nose of the king, right in his palace. So he didn't have to be hiding somewhere else. He was growing right up. He was growing up right in the palace of the same king who wanted to kill him. We see that Moses was, as a believer, put under trial. He was under heavy test. He had to leave his homeland and go far away. And then when he thought he was settled, God gave him a commandment to come right back to the place that he had ran away from. And this was a challenge for him, because he knew that he was going back to Egypt, where people wanted him dead. But he had a mission to fulfill, and he had to fulfill that mission. He had to go and deliver God's words to the evil king at the time. And we know from a hadith that the best jihad is to speak a word of truth in the face of a tyrant. And this is what Moses was doing. He was going to deliver the message of truth to the tyrannous Tsar of the time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.